When I was a junior in high school, we had to sit down and make our schedules for senior year. You know, pick the classes, set the stage for your big year before graduation. And there it was on the list, a required speech class. That was my nightmare. See, I have a hearing loss and a speech impediment from a traumatic brain injury caused by my mother when I was 3 years old. She blamed my father for making her so angry that she hurt me. And then together they covered it up with a story that they would tell for decades, that I had lost my hearing from jaundice as a baby. To make themselves feel better, they made fun of me. They mocked the words I said wrong, they laughed at the sounds I couldn't hear, and after years of being tortured like that, there was no way I was going to willingly step into a classroom where speaking out loud was the point. My whole life, I had pretended I didn't have a hearing loss. I pretended I was just like everyone else. I hated being called out of class for speech therapy. I hated the hearing aids that didn't help, and I hated that no one ever listened when I tried to explain. So, when a man from the Rotary Club came to our German class to talk about becoming a foreign exchange student, a light bulb went out. That was it. That was my way out of taking a speech class, my ticket to flee the country. I poured all of my energy into convincing my parents that I had to do this. Of course, I never told them the real reason, and so just after I turned 17, I was on a plane to Germany. Now, here's the thing about escape plans. They don't always go the way you imagine. I landed in Germany, got placed with a host family, and suddenly the language that I thought I knew wasn't the language they spoke. They didn't speak much English, I didn't speak their version of German, and between the jet lag and the language barrier, it hit me like a truck. So I cried, and I slept a lot. One afternoon, I finally dragged myself out of the room, and the host mom had made fresh bread and jam. Well, the host dad came over to me, tried to comfort me, and he put his arm around me. He didn't know my past. He didn't know that a simple gesture like that could trigger me. But my mother, she called me every single day while I was in Germany. And when I told her about the arm around my shoulder, she turned it into something else. She called the Rotary Club, accused my host father of being inappropriate with me, and demanded I be sent home. The Rotary Club offered to move me to a different family, but she said no. So within a week, I was back in the U.S. I spent my senior year being tutored and working full-time at my parents' Subway restaurants. When it came time for college, I knew I wanted to go into therapy, but I was torn. Physical or occupational? Well, physical therapy required a speech class. OT didn't, so I chose OT. The irony of it all stuns me. My mother was protecting me from a host father who wasn't a threat, all while leaving me unprotected with a man who actually was sexually abusing me, her own husband, my father. But here's where the story bends toward healing, because despite of all that, despite the fear, the avoidance, the running, I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. I love occupational therapy. It was the right path. And eventually I became a yoga teacher, a speaker, a podcast host. Now I talk in front of people all the time. I record classes, I create trauma-informed trainings, and I don't even think twice about whether I'll say a word wrong. I own my hearing loss now. I tell people if I need them to repeat themselves. The little girl who was silenced is finally free to speak. So years later, I discovered the proof of what I had always known but had been buried under lies, my baby book. My parents wanted to throw it away, and I wanted to keep it, so I stored it in my fireproof safe. One day, something nudged me to open it, and there it was, my mother's handwriting. She had written that I never had jaundice. My hearing loss wasn't diagnosed until I was 5 when my kindergarten teacher caught it. By then, my mother probably forgot what she had written in my baby book, so she had written history in her mind. And while my parents refused to talk to me, my mother even went as far as to have a Florida judge declare me as a stalker for writing her letters of forgiveness. The truth is no longer hidden. I see the irony, I see the patterns, and I see how the very things I ran from forced me into the life I was meant to live. I never told anyone the real reason behind my decision to go to Germany, not even my best friend at the time. So years later, when I finally told her the truth, she says, Why didn't you tell me? There was another English class we could have taken instead of speech. I had to take that one all by myself. That moment hit me hard. All the energy, all the desperation I had poured into fleeing the country, and it was actually another option sitting right there in front of me. But when you're carrying shame that deep, and when you're convinced no one will understand, you don't see options. You just run. So, what's the moral of this story? Sometimes our insecurities, our fears, the very things we tried to avoid, well, they still lead us down the right path. They shape us, they guide us, and if we're willing to do the work, they can even heal us. I sharpened all my other senses because I couldn't rely on my hearing. I learned how to be aware of everything, body language, energy, presence, and that awareness is now what I bring into every class I teach, every client I meet, and every story I share. So yes, I fled to Germany to avoid a speech class, but here I am today, speaking freely, authentically, and without fear. And that, my friends, is the ultimate full circle.